Good morning and welcome to Light Reflections from First Friends. We are glad you have chosen to join us for this virtual worship service and hope you find it beneficial to your spiritual journey. We consider this an abbreviated version of our in-person meeting for worship for those wishing to join us from a distance. If this is your first time joining us, First Friends is a thriving, progressive Quaker meeting in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. We consider ourselves a loving, inclusive, joyous gathering of people seeking to know truth under the leadership of God's Spirit. All are welcome, no matter race, age, cultural background, sexual orientation and identity, marital status, physical and mental ability, family structure, or economic circumstance. Our hope is that through this worship experience, you will discover our faith community is unlike any other, where silent meditation is as important as the spoken word, where we emphasize the importance of one's personal encounter with the divine, and where we seek to support one another as we discover truth together. Now we invite you to center down and enter this virtual worship space with us.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to Light Reflections. This week's scripture is Ephesians 4, 1-3 from the Voice version. As a prisoner of the Lord, I urge you, live a life that is worthy of the calling He has graciously extended to you. Be humble, be gentle, be patient, tolerate one another in an atmosphere thick with love. Make every effort to preserve the unity the Spirit has already created, and peace binding you together. Back in the spring of 2017, when we were visiting First Friends for the first time, we were invited after meeting for worship to attend the beginning of your monthly business meeting before going out for lunch. Since we were living in Oregon and had not seen our son Alex for several months, we made sure to fly into Fort Wayne and pick him up from Huntington University and bring him with us. He came to meeting for worship that morning with a skeptical outlook due to factors that affected our family in our meeting in Oregon. And I'll be honest, I was using him to give me a raw perspective and knew he would be an honest indicator for what he saw at First Friends. Alex said very little during worship other than how the name tags made him a little uncomfortable and how he did not like the organ. Yet, when we were ushered into the front row of meeting for business in the parlor that morning, he was very attentive and listened very carefully. I knew Alex, at his young age, had been a part of one too many meetings for business that had gone wrong, or were not facilitated well at both the local and yearly meeting levels. As a youth representative and leader, he found himself in the middle of the split taking place over same-sex marriage that was tearing apart our yearly meeting in the Northwest. At the time of our visit, Dan Raines was the clerk of the meeting and had gone out of his way to make us feel welcome. Jeff Goins, our current clerk, introduced us in the business meeting and said we were only going to stay for the beginning of the meeting. As we sat listening to the committee reports and listening to the business of First Friends, Alex leaned over and he whispered something in my ear I will never forget. He said, "Well, they know how to do business." I remember well Dan Raines beginning that meeting for worship by discussing how Quakers consider the business of the meeting as an extension of our worship. I had heard this before, but sadly, due to the turmoil in our local and yearly meetings in Oregon, we had rarely experienced it. I spent the last 2 years in Oregon before coming to First Friends, helping guide and work closely with the clerk of our meeting at Silverton Friends to get us back to this Quaker foundation. And even though, as Alex put it, we know how to do business at First Friends, I believe on occasion we need to be reminded and even retaught on how we can keep our business as an extension of our worship. As I prepared for the sermon this week, I returned to what I consider the primer on Quaker process, ironically by that same title, written by Mathilda Navias. She starts the chapter on meeting for business with the following quote from Paul A. Lacey and Bill Tabor from their important book, The Purpose of Meetings for Worship and Business. I believe it gives a solid framework for Quaker business being a true extension of our worship. They say this: the meeting for business, if it be spirit-filled and properly understood, is a hands-on, laboratory-filled experience in which the whole fellowship comes face to face with the Spirit's demands for the sacrifice of time, treasure, convenience, and prejudice. When opinions differ widely and the need for spiritual discernment becomes crucial, the best are driven, as never in a meeting for worship, to seek that Spirit which can sustain harmony while waiting for the right leading. Thus, God's work among us becomes more real, and faith is both tested and strengthened in the business meeting. Well, from this definition, you could almost say a Quaker meeting for business is just Quaker worship on steroids. Often in our world, we connect business with getting things done or dealing with issues or fixing those things that are going or have gone wrong. But those are all just effects or outcomes of business practice. When you study Quaker business, you find that the primary aim is to deepen the spiritual life of the community, rather than just getting things done. Therefore, you will not find Robert's Rules of Order within Quaker business, because Robert's Rules of Order is a system devised solely around decision-making and finalizing things and, well, getting things done. For Quakers, business is much more, so much more fluid, so much more about process. Well, to understand how we arrived at this place, we need to do a little history. George Selleck wrote about this history in a short pamphlet titled Principles of the Quaker Business Meeting. He says this, he says, when Quakers arose in the 17th century, there were objections on the part of some to the holding of business meetings. Some persons felt that such gatherings placed undue limitations on the guidance of the individual. But the new Quaker movement was characterized by a faith that the group could be guided, as well as the individual. The Quaker conviction that the light of Christ is given in some measure to everyone implies both an individual apprehension of the will of God and also an understanding of God's will mediated through this insight of others. Quakerism has always had within it a centrifugal force of individualism, but likewise, there's always been a centripetal force of corporate life in tension with it. From the fruitful interaction of these two have come the decisions of the society. The vision and concerns of individuals prevent the society from being over traditional and static. The insights of the gathered group prevent it from moving over hastily in unconsidered enthusiasm. In some ways, I consider our meeting for business a launch pad, a sounding board for greater possibilities for ministry. What individually may happen inside each of us during worship may have the opportunity to be honed and supported and find wings among the corporate gathering. A great example of this launching pad or sounding board idea, since I've come to minister alongside you all, was back in November of 2017 in my first 6 months at First Friends. I love to hear Amy Perry tell the story of sensing the Spirit's leading during meeting for worship to investigate volunteering for the Right Sharing of World Resources Stamps program. It was clear when she came in to talk with Beth and me that following week that this nudging put her on a trajectory for much more than volunteering. Amy ended up feeling led to take over the stamps program with Right Sharing of World Resources and to continue the legacy that friend Brad Hathaway had begun 20 years earlier. But Amy knew this was bigger than her personal nudge. She knew that if she was going to take this on, it would have to be a corporate venture. Her individual vision became the launch pad for a full-fledged ministry that impacts our community as well as the world. Amy's faithfulness to follow that leading and First Friends coming around Amy corporately through supporting and volunteering and affirming her leading, I believe have deepened the spiritual life of First Friends. I love popping my head in to say hello or deliver the latest parcel of stamps to our faithful stamping crew on Wednesdays. There's not only an air of friendly fellowship and camaraderie, but also a sense of purpose that what they are doing together is making a difference in changing our world. In many churches today, business gets put before worship, and the outcome can be much different than that example I just gave. Worship must be part of the process of maybe I should say, it must be the process. Our worship at First Friends, whether unprogrammed or programmed, should be where the business begins. If Quaker business process is about deepening the spiritual life and inviting participants to seek God's will and build and preserve a loving community together, then each time we come to meeting for worship, we are laying a foundation for our ongoing business. It should be what happens in this place right here that ushers us into our committee work, our monthly business meetings, even our daily interactions with our neighbors and fellow friends. The integrity of the gathered community becomes more important than the decisions being made. Our business is where we work to maintain loving relationships with one another, practice listening or speaking, and seek a unified sense of truth. Eden Grace, who served Friends United meeting until recently, has alluded to Quaker business practice as being more about having the right attitude over the preference or over the preferred outcomes or results. She spelled out 4 attitudes Friends must utilize in their business in an article she wrote for the World Council of Churches in 2000. And I believe they are a great review for us as we enter any business at First Friends. One is our attitude toward God. Eden says that when we enter into any business meeting, it should be with hearts and minds prepared to be led by the Spirit. That we seek to renew our commitment to the divine's leading and are willing to lay our own strong feelings and desires before God. 2, our attitude toward the other members. She says, Quaker process places a high value on the strength of the community. A sense of the meaning is only achieved when those participating respect and care for one another. Thus, it requires us to have a humble and loving spirit, imputing purity of motive to all participants, and offering our highest selves in return. This way we can create a safe place for sharing. Our focus should be on listening carefully, respectfully, lovingly, and always listening for the presence of God through what someone is saying, knowing that there is that of God in each of us. Well, 3, our attitude is toward the process. She says, Friends value process over product, action over outcome. And that means we respect each other's thoughts and feelings and insights more than expedient action. The process of reaching a decision yield more results than the decisions themselves. Our attention to the divine movement in the community is in fact the source of decision and action, so that process and outcome are ideally two sides of the same experience. Well, 4 is our attitude toward potential outcomes. Eden says, we know that none of us is likely to enter the meeting with a fully formed understanding of the will of God. And so we expect that a new way will emerge which is not necessarily identified with the position of any person or faction. This means a group meeting in the right spirit may be given greater insight than any single person. A gathered meeting under the authority of God is often able to find unity in creative ways which were not considered before the meeting, but which become apparent during its course. Though the process of Quaker business may take some time, at the end it can find a united meeting able to act swiftly because the action has been widely agreed. So ask yourself, are these my attitudes when I come to meeting for business, a committee meeting, or any business at First Friends? I sense when we don't come with these attitudes in check, we immediately are faced with a lack of mutual trust and respect for one another, a shyness or an unwillingness to engage with each other, and a disregard for what our fellow friends may consider a leading from the Spirit. And when this is the case, our default in matters of business among friends then quickly becomes difficult. We butt heads, we question motives, and personal agendas replace the process of deepening the spiritual life of the community. Friend Michael Wajda sums it up well when he says, this is about looking for truth as a body, rather than about our individual senses of truth. We need to enter worshipfully into our meetings for business. We need to wrestle with the issues, to share our glimpses of the truth as we see it, and then we need to let go and listen deeply until all those glimpses give us a sense of the truth as a whole. This takes time, patience, and surrender. May this be true for us at First Friends. Now, as we enter waiting worship, let us humbly present ourselves before the divine for transformation and teaching, love, hope, freedom, a leading of the Spirit, and all with a proper attitude for one another. Here are some queries to ponder this morning. What are my misconceptions and attitudes about Quaker business? What leadings of the Spirit have I had during worship that I need to bring forward to the corporate body for discernment and support? And how am I assisting my fellow friends in deepening our spiritual life through Quaker business?
waters, born of land and sky and sea, all created in thine image, all to live in harmony. Show to us again thy garden, where all life flows fresh and free. Gently guide thy sons and daughters into full maturity. Teach us how to trust each other, how to use for good our power, how to touch the earth with reverence, then once more will Eden flower. Bless the earth and all thy children, one creation, make us whole, interwoven, all connected, planet-wide and inmost soul. Holy Mother, life bestowing, bid our waste and warfare cease. Fill us with grace overflowing. Teach us how to live in peace.
We close this time of worship with a Quaker prayer. God, open our eyes and unstop our ears, that we may see your light and may hear your heartbeat, reflecting and resounding within our chests, in those of all our neighbors, near and far, in all creatures and plants, and in the ground we walk upon. When we finally are able to yield to the leading of your rhythm and flow, may we come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of you in all. Amen. Have a great week, friends.